Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So here's the next deck profile update. This time it's on Despia Dogmatika. So last time I did this was for the Halloween special, and at the time I didn't have the new cards from Burst of Destiny yet, simply because the set hadn't come out. And I figured, I'd wait a couple weeks before I updated it, make sure I test out like different ratios to see like which direction I really liked best with this deck. And well, I finally decided on which one I liked best, and yeah, figured I'd share with you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. So this deck is very fusion focused, simply because this deck has a lot of cool effects, especially when they're sent to the grave or by banishment, usually by a card effect. So yeah, that's one of the things I like about this deck. So starting off with 3 copies of Aliber. So this guy is one of your main searchers. He searches out any branded spell or trap, and of course he also has a really cool graveyard effect where if a fusion or a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect by an opponent's card, while this card is in your graveyard, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls, special summon this card. Now keep in mind you can only use one Aliber effect per turn and only once that turn. So you may like going first or second, whichever you prefer. You generally want to have them in your graveyard, that way you can have them ready for follow-up play next turn. And also, yeah, it's just a good way just to, disrupt your opponent at the same time. Or just chain block your Despia Dogmatika and such. But anyway, moving on. 3 copies of Despia Tragedy, definitely one of the best cards in the deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, you can search out any Despian monster you want. So yeah, Despia Tragedy is pretty nuts. So I definitely hope it gets a holo printing soon. So we'll just have to wait and see. Next, 2 copies of Dramaturge. So this card is used as fusion material, whether sent to the graveyard or banished. You can special summon this card. And one thing I do like about this is that it actually has some pretty unique interaction with Despia Dogmatika, where like as soon as you summon out the Dogmatika, for example, and then you decide to trigger his effect, you can chain, as long as your opponent has no response, you can chain to make all monsters currently on the field to 0, and essentially by the time he's special summoned, he still gains his 3,000 attack points. Now, what's also interesting about this card is that if a fusion, synchro, exceeds, or link monster is special summoned except during damage tip, you can target one effect monster on the field and negate its effects. So it's definitely another good way to just interrupt your opponent, basically. Moving on, 1 copy of Ad Libitum of Despia. So this is one of the new cards. This card is used as fusion material. You can, or sent to the graveyard, banished by the way. You can target one Despia monster or level 8 or higher fusion monster that is banished in your graveyard, special summon it. So definitely a good way just to get some resources back. His first effect rarely comes up. You can make all the monsters currently on the field gain attack equal to their own level times 100 until the end of the opponent's turn. That's all right. It's really not that important, honestly. But if you just want to like push for more damage, it's probably the ways to do it. But overall, you're mostly just going to use it for his effect to when he's used as fusion material, basically. But anyway, that pretty much rounds up the actual Despians. Let's go ahead and move on to the other engines. For the Albus engine, I'm running 2 copies of Albion the Shadow Dragon and 1 copy of Fallen of Albus. Albion counts as Fallen of Albus while on field and in the grave. And he basically, what he does is that if he's sent to while he's in your hand or in your graveyard, you can either send a branded spell or trap from hand or from your deck to the grave as cost, and you can apply one of his 2 effects. If you send one from hand, you special summon this card. If you send one from deck, you place this card to the bottom of the deck, and you effectively just draw 1 card. So really good for draw power. And one of the things I like about it is that he never really feels like a brick. He always adds some form of value regardless. So you could just use him for discard fodder for a super poly, and you still get added value regardless. So, and of course, Fallen of Albus being a super poly on legs, why wouldn't you want to run them? And they're all dragon, which is what I like. And just go and get them out of the way. I'm running the one of each of the Dogmatikas, 1 Ecclesia, 1 Fleur, and 1 Maximus. Everyone should already know what these do. So yeah, don't want to get into too much detail about that. Changed up my hand trap lineup. It's a little different. Decided to go 3 Ash Blossoms, of course, still. And 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, simply because, as I mentioned in my Salamangre profile, Ghost Ogre has made a strong comeback this format. In fact, it's probably one of the best hand traps now, because against the Sword Soul matchup, as soon as they activate one of their monsters' effects to summon a token, just pop the monster, and they can't really do much of anything with that token. And against the Flunderees, you just target that, well, not target, but you pop that field spell as soon as they activate it. So, yeah, Ghost Ogre is pretty nice. All right. So that pretty much rounds up our monsters. Now moving on to spells and traps. starting off with the spells, gonna go with 3 copies of Despia Theater of the Branded. It's Fusion Gate effectively, and a Monster Reborn built into one, so yeah, pretty nutty. 3 Branded Opening, it's basically this deck's Rhoda. Discard a card, not cost by the way, then take a Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon in defense mode. And also has a built-in protection in the graveyard where if your fusion monsters are in danger of being destroyed by a card effect, you could just banish this card and save them, basically. Next, 2 Branded in red. So this is the new fusion spell. You can target 1 Despia monster or Fallen of Alibis in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and then apply one of the following effects. You can fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing materials listed on it from your hand or field, but it cannot attack directly this turn. Of course, you can only activate 1 per turn, so yeah. Moving on, 3 copies of Nadir's Servant. So Nadir's Servant, you dump a extra deck monster to the grave and search out one of your Dogmatikas, or just get one from the grave. And yeah, it locks you out of your extra deck for the turn, but honestly, it's for the rest of the turn. So as long as you get your other combos going and then activate this later, you should be fine. And one thing I like about Nadir's Servant, it gets my Shaddoll engine live, so yeah. Moving on, 2 copies of Super Poly, just because I only have room for 2, but honestly 2 should be fine because just about all your fusion monsters are Super Poly targets anyway, and I just wanted to make room for other cards like this one. 2 copies of Triple T. So yeah, I finally managed to get these off of some trades, so I'm really happy with that. And yeah, like if I get disrupted with something, I can just play this, either draw 2 cards, rip a card out of my opponent's hand, or just take control of a monster. So like, yeah, definitely comes in clutch whenever you really need it. And of course, to go along with it, 1 copy of Called by the Grave. And then last but not least, 1 Foolish Burial. And let's go ahead and move on to the trap cards. Sorry, I'm a little groggy this morning, guys. But anyway, for traps, still running the 1 Screams of the Branded. It's Monster Reborn for fusion monsters. It actually has some really funny interaction with Albion. So if Albion is already in your grave, by that time he's already Fallen of Albus, and you send this directly from your deck to the grave and then send Albion to the bottom of the deck, this card will register on its end phase effect work because it was technically sent off of the effect of Fallen of Albus. So during the end phase, this card was sent to the grave to activate the effects of Fallen of Albus. You can reset this card to your side of the field. So yeah, Screams of the Branded always serves the purpose regardless, so that's what I love about it. 1 Dogmatika Punishment, just to go with our Dogmatika package. It's a little bit riskier because, it locks you out of your extra deck until the end of the next turn, or until the end of your next turn if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, your next turn. And of course, 1 copy of Shaddoll Schism, because again, with Nadir's Servant, you're going to send App Clone, use App Clone to search this out and discard something else, and that's pretty much how you get your Shaddoll engine live. Alright, so now moving on to the extra deck. Extra deck is 2 copies of Despia and Quiritas. So this is the one I was talking about where, like, if you use Draw Materials as fusion material to make this guy, and then you trigger Draw Materials, you can chain this guy's effect, make the attack points of all monsters on the field except level 8 or higher fusion monsters, make them 0. That way your Draw Materials comes back at full power. And also this card has a lingering effect. If it's destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon a Fallen of Albus or Despia monster from your deck, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Or you can just simply add it to your hand. But usually what I like to do with this card is, like, if it does get destroyed or just sent to the grave by a card effect, I like to trigger a not Fallen of Albus, but Owlbear's effect to chain block this effect, so that way I can get Fallen of Albus out and then just kind of like keep pushing my combos forward. So that's one of the things I like. So let's see, let me just make sure. Yeah, he just needs to leave the field by a card effect. Doesn't just have to be destroyed. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Moving on, 2 copies of the new Masquerade, the Blazing Dragon. So I was really excited for this card. At first, I was only running this at 1, but then I realized, you know what? This card actually puts your opponent on the clock very quickly. So, because in this format, everyone has to run like so many different card effects, or just activate so many cards just to get their combos pushed through. If you can manage to get 2 of these out, your opponent effectively has to pay 1,200 life points for cost to keep activating their effects. And funny enough, like if they activate Dark Ruler no more, they still have to pay the life points. So that's just one of the ways to go about it. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. So yeah, and you're basically forcing your opponent to lose their life points more rapidly, and then by the time they finally get something going, they're in danger of just losing the game downright. So yeah, Masquerade is pretty nuts. So definitely worth trying out. So yeah. 1 Despian Proskinian. I definitely feel it's easier to bring this guy out now with Branded in red. So during the main phase, you can target one Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster in the graveyard, in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, or you can just special summon it to your side of the field. So yeah, if you just want to like steal an opponent's monster, that's definitely one of the ways to go about it. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict damage to them equal to their attack or defense, whichever is higher. And yeah, Draskinian, pretty big, so why not? Next, I'm bringing Albion, the branded dragon, to 2, simply because like I tend to like to use his graveyard effect to set a branded spell or trap, and plus with Cyframe Lord Omega, I can just recycle one and then just keep like re-looping the process. So Albion is pretty good, and not to mention by itself, it is pretty a really powerful monster. So like if this card is Fusion Summon, you can banish materials from your hand, field, or graveyard to summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster. So he basically just gives you access to another body. So definitely something worth trying out. One Titanic Clad, you know, you send this off to the graveyard with Maximus or whatever, and then you can just go and get yourself a free Dogmatika card at the end phase. For the Shadal package, one App Cologne, one Construct, and of course one Winda, since most decks can't really play around Winda. For my main Super Poly targets, which again, all the monsters are technically Super Poly targets, one Starving Venom, and one Grindiest Despia. So I figured, why not? And a couple other cards to go with our Dogmatika engine, one Intis and one Omega. Simply because again, Omega recycles your resources, and then Intis pops any card if it's sent to the graveyard. So like in case your opponent happens to hit you with Imperial Order, if you haven't used Maximus effect yet, you can just dump Intis and whatever else you need and just get rid of that Imperial Order or just any other floodgate that can be a bit of a hassle effect essentially. So yeah, that's just like my thing about it. All right, so that's it for that. Now moving on to the side deck. Side deck's pretty self-explanatory. 3 Lancia, you know, against Tri-Brigade or whatever. 2 Phantasme, because, you know, just in case if I happen to come across a Link-heavy deck. 2 Nibiru, since, you know, I'm not expecting everybody to have cross-out designators. So, like, against Heroes or Salamangrate or whatever, that's basically one of the best ways to deal with them. 1 Pankratops is another powerful going second card. For any backrow-heavy strategies, you know, 3 Twin Twister, 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, evenly matched, and of course 1 copy of Red Reboot. So yeah, why not, right? But anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will catch you guys again next time.